The roses were dying. That's what broke my heart the most when I returned to my childhood home 3 months after Mom's funeral. Her prize-winning garden, once a riot of blooms and fragrance, was withering under the hot Texas sun. "Just haven't had time for gardening," my stepdad Richard muttered when I mentioned it, not looking up from his phone. "Besides, the house is going on the market next week. No point maintaining the landscaping." I froze, my hand still touching one of Mom's beloved Queen Elizabeth roses. "You're selling the house?" Of course. Now he did look up, his expression a mixture of condescension and false sympathy. "Laura, your mother left everything to me. The house, the investments, everything. I need to liquidate assets to provide for my retirement and the kids' college funds." My stepbrothers, twins Kevin and Kyle, were 12. I'd never really connected with them, but Mom had tried her best to blend our families after marrying Richard 5 years ago. Now they barely acknowledged me, too absorbed in their video games to even attend Mom's funeral. But this was Mom's house, I protested. She inherited it from Grandma. "The rose garden's been here for 40 years. And now it's mine," Richard cut in firmly. "Your mother made her choices clear in her will. I'm sorry if that upsets you, but you need to accept reality and move on." Reality. The word echoed in my head as I drove back to my small apartment that evening. The reality was that nothing about the situation felt right. Mom had always told me the house would be mine someday. "It's been in our family for 3 generations, she'd say as we tended the roses together. "Someday you'll raise your own family here, add your own touches to the garden." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mom's last few months, how Richard had gradually restricted my visits, claiming she was too tired for company, how he'd handled all her medical care, all her legal affairs, how I hadn't even known she was updating her will. The next morning, I called in sick to work and started digging. Not in the garden, not yet, but through records. Mom had been meticulous about paperwork, a habit from her 30 years as a legal secretary. Surely she'd left some trace of her true intentions. My first stop was her old law firm, where she'd worked until her marriage to Richard. Her former boss, Mr. Harrison, was retired now but agreed to meet me for coffee. "Something always felt off about that marriage," he said, stirring his latte thoughtfully. "Your mother was one of the sharpest legal minds I knew. Not a lawyer, but she understood the law better than most attorneys. The way she changed after marrying Richard, it wasn't like her." "Changed how?" "Became withdrawn, stopped maintaining her own financial accounts. Let him handle everything." He leaned forward. "Laura, about 6 months before she died, your mother called me. Wanted to discuss estate planning. But when I arrived at your house, Richard was there. Said she wasn't feeling well, had to reschedule. We never did have that meeting." A chill ran down my spine despite the warm coffee. Do you think he was controlling her?" Mr. Harrison chose his words carefully. "I think your mother was a wealthy woman who suddenly signed everything over to a man she'd known less than 5 years, and I think that's worth investigating." The next few weeks became a crash course in forensic investigation. I took unpaid leave from my teaching job, using every spare moment to uncover my mother's paper trail. Bank statements showed large transfers to offshore accounts beginning shortly after her marriage. Property records revealed that Richard had gradually added his name to all her assets, not just the house, but her investment properties, her art collection, everything. But the smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Mom's best friend Susan, who now lived in a nursing home. "She gave me this," Susan said, hands trembling as she pulled a sealed envelope from her bedside drawer. "Made me promise not to open it or give it to anyone unless something happened to her. Said if she died suddenly, I should give it to you." Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper with a series of numbers and what looked like a hand-drawn map of the rose garden. "Your mother spent hours in that garden after Richard moved in," Susan recalled. "Said it was the only place she could think clearly, the only place he didn't follow her." I studied the map, my heart racing. In the center, where Mom's prized heritage roses grew, was a small X with a note. "Look deeper, my darling. The truth blooms in darkness." That night, I waited until 2 a.m. before driving to my childhood home. The spare key was still hidden under the loose brick by the back door. Richard apparently hadn't discovered all of Mom's secrets. The garden was eerie in the moonlight, the dying roses casting strange shadows. Following the map, I made my way to the heritage rose bed and started digging. 2 feet down, my shovel hit something solid. A waterproof safe, small but heavy. The numbers from Susan's paper worked on the combination lock. Inside, protected from moisture and time, was a treasure trove: journals, documents, photos, and a USB drive. But what caught my eye first was a letter on top, dated just 3 months before Mom's death. "My dearest Laura," it began. "If you're reading this, then my suspicions were right. Richard isn't who he pretends to be, and I've gathered everything you need to prove it." I sat there in the dirt of my mother's garden, tears streaming down my face as I read her final message. When dawn broke, I had the beginning of a story so twisted, so calculated, that it would shake our entire family to its core. Mom's journals told a story of gradual manipulation and control. But they also revealed something else. Richard wasn't just an opportunistic second husband. He was a con man with a history of targeting wealthy widows. And my mother had discovered his true identity. But the USB drive, that was the key to everything. Mom might have been a legal secretary, but she knew how to build a case. And she'd built one that would destroy Richard completely. I was so absorbed in reading, I almost missed the sound of footsteps on the garden path. "What are you doing here?" I looked up to find Richard standing over me, his face twisted with rage as he spotted the open safe. Behind him, still in their pajamas, Kevin and Kyle stared wide-eyed at the mess I'd made of their father's perfect lawn. "Finding the truth," I said, standing slowly, clutching Mom's evidence to my chest. "Would you like to know what Mom discovered about your real name, Richard? Or should I call you David Thompson? Or maybe James Wilson? How many other names have you used?" Richard's face went through a series of expressions: shock, rage, and finally, a calculated calm that was somehow worse than anger. "Boys," he said quietly, "go back inside." "But Dad," Kevin started. "Now." They scurried away, leaving us alone in the dying rose garden. Richard took a step toward me, but I held my ground. "Whatever you think you found," he said, "it won't hold up. Your mother was confused near the end. Paranoid. The medications. The medications you kept increasing?" I cut in, pulling out Mom's medical diary. The ones that made her so drowsy she could barely function. Funny how that started right after she visited her old doctor, the appointment where she found out she was actually in perfect health. His jaw tightened. "You're trespassing. I'm calling the police." "Go ahead." I held up the USB drive. "I'm sure they'd be very interested in what's on here. Mom was thorough, you know. She tracked down your other wives." That hit home. Richard went completely still. "What other wives?" "Margaret Thompson in Florida. Sandra Wilson in Arizona. Both wealthy widows who married a charming man who then drained their accounts and disappeared." I met his gaze steadily. "Mom found them both. Got their statements, found the pattern. How you change your name, move to a new state, find another wealthy widow to target." "Lies," he spat, but there was fear in his eyes now. "The police in Tampa would disagree. They've had an open case on David Thompson for years. Mom contacted them 3 months before she died. They've been building a case. All they needed was proof you were the same man." I pulled out my phone, pulled up the photo Mom had uncovered. "Like this picture from Margaret's wedding. You were younger, had different hair. But those eyes, they're unmistakable. And facial recognition software agrees." Richard lunged for my phone, but I was ready. I stepped back, my thumb hovering over the send button. "Everything's already backed up to the cloud. If anything happens to me, it all goes straight to the FBI's wire fraud division." "What do you want?" His voice was a growl. "First, you're going to call off the house sale. Then we're going to the bank, and you're going to return every penny you stole from Mom's accounts. After that," I smiled grimly, "we're taking a little trip to see Mom's lawyer." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Richard, knowing he was trapped, cooperated with a sullen resignation. We went to 3 different banks, where he transferred Mom's money back to accounts in my name. The house documents were next. He signed papers returning full ownership to the estate. But the real showdown came that afternoon at Mr. Harrison's office. I called ahead, and he'd assembled quite an audience. The estate lawyer, 2 police detectives, and on video conference, a very interested FBI agent from Tampa. "Mr. Thompson," the FBI agent said, using Richard's original name, "we've been looking for you for a long time." Richard's carefully maintained facade finally cracked. "Those women," he snarled, turning to me, "they were nothing. Your mother, she was different. I actually cared about her. You drugged her. I cut in, my voice shaking with rage. You isolated her. You watched her die while stealing everything she'd worked for. The only different thing about Mom was that she was smarter than you. She saw through you and made sure you pay for it. The evidence was overwhelming. Mom's journals detailed every suspicious change in her health after Richard began managing her medications. The USB drive contained financial records showing how he'd systematically drained her accounts, along with documentation linking him to his previous identities and victims. 3 counts of wire fraud, the FBI agent was saying. Identity theft, possible medical abuse, and that's just for starters. I watched as they led Richard away in handcuffs, his face a mask of cold fury. His final words to me were a threat. Those boys are mine. You'll never see them again. But he was wrong about that too. Kevin and Kyle were waiting at the house when I returned, their young faces confused and frightened. They'd heard enough to know their father had done something terrible. But they didn't understand the full scope. What's going to happen to us? Kyle asked in a small voice. I sat them down in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Mom and I had spent countless hours baking and talking. That depends on what you want. Your father, he's going to be away for a long time. But this was your home too. Mom would want you to stay if that's what you choose. You let us stay. Kevin looked stunned. Even after what Dad did. You're innocent in all this, I said softly. And Mom loved you both. She wrote about you in her journals, how she wished she had more time to be a better grandmother to you. That night, as the boys slept in their rooms upstairs, I sat in the garden with Mom's journals. There was one entry, dated just weeks before her death, that I kept coming back to. My darling Laura, I know you'll find this someday. Remember what I taught you about roses? How they need both sunshine and rain to grow strong. Life is like that too. The hardships we face can either break us or make us more resilient. I chose to fight back in my own way to protect you and even Richard's boys from his poison. Now it's your turn to bloom, my darling. Make this house a home again. Restore the garden. Create the family you deserve, not the one thrust upon you by deception. 6 months have passed since that night. Richard pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges. He'll be in prison for at least 15 years. His other victims have finally gotten closure, and Mom's estate has been fully restored to me. The boys are still with me. Their mother, Richard's first wife, died years ago, and they had no other family. It was challenging at first, becoming guardian to 2 preteens overnight, but we're finding our way. They're good kids, untainted by their father's cruelty. Most importantly, the garden is blooming again. Kevin and Kyle help me tend it now, learning the names and needs of each rose variety. Last week, our heritage roses won first prize at the county fair. Mom would have been so proud. Yesterday, while deadheading the Queen Elizabeths, Kyle found something else buried in the garden. A small ceramic jar containing Mom's favorite rose seeds and another note. For the next generation, plant them with love. We'll plant them this weekend, adding new life to this garden that has seen so much pain and healing. Mom always said roses can survive almost anything if their roots are strong enough. The same is true of families, real families, built on love and truth rather than lies and manipulation. The house is full of laughter again. The garden blooms with new purpose. And somewhere, I know Mom is watching, smiling as her final gift continues to grow and flourish in ways she might never have imagined.